What you fight against persists, but what you accept transforms you. Do not fear your shadow. Do not fear the pause. Everything you are feeling right now is part of a greater movement, a return to yourself. Listen to your soul, embrace it, and honor all the parts within you that refuse to be forgotten. Your stillness is not a sign of defeat. It is the prelude to your awakening. This message is powerful. Many people will recognize themselves in it. I want to know who feels the way this message describes. Write it in the comments with the words, "I feel it." Watch the video until the end to truly understand the message. Let's begin. Tell me, how often have you opened your eyes in the morning and still felt that your soul didn't wake up with you? You move, you breathe, you can even smile if necessary, but something inside you feels heavy. Very heavy. You don't have a fever, no physical pain, and yet you long for nothing more than to just stay in bed, motionless, far from the world. Maybe someone told you that this is laziness, that you need to pull yourself together. But I tell you something different. When your body is ready, but your soul doesn't respond, there is a hidden message behind it. I am Carl Gustav Jung, and today I invite you to view this exhaustion from a different perspective, not as weakness, but as a symbol. Because from my years of studying the human soul, I've learned this: the desire to stay in bed without any clear reason does not come from comfort, but from the unconscious. In this urge not to rise, there is no failure, but a quiet whisper from your innermost self. It is the voice of a part of you that has been forgotten, left unnoticed, and is now finally speaking to you. But we live surrounded by noise, expectations, and masks, and so our soul often screams in silence. And you respond to it, unknowingly, with stillness. Maybe it's not about moving more, but finally becoming quiet enough to hear what you truly need. If you stay with me, I will show you how this apparent standstill can be the first step in your profound transformation. We are not looking for someone to blame, nor for quick solutions. We are looking this uncomfortable feeling straight in the eyes, because it is not here to destroy you. It is here to awaken you. But first, you must understand something. It's easy to look at someone lying in bed and assume they are wasting their time, being lazy, or have given up on life. But I have learned something, and perhaps you felt it too without being able to name it. There are moments when the body rests, but the soul screams, not with words, but with that strange emptiness you can't explain. With the feeling that something is missing, even though you seemingly have everything. With the deep alienation from what you do, from who you are, from what others expect of you. And in this seemingly passive state, something inside you is working at full speed. Perhaps it is a suppressed emotion that finally wants to be felt. Or an old pain you've swept under the rug of responsibility. Or a true deep desire you've ignored for years, out of fear of disappointing others. When the soul is exhausted, it doesn't always show through tears or panic. Sometimes it simply fades. And this very emptiness, this urge not to move, is not weakness. It is a defense mechanism, a silent cry for help. Because when the soul can no longer find a place to express itself, it tries to protect you by shutting down the outside world and turning you inward. There, in that forced silence, in that bed that becomes a sanctuary, your unconscious begins to reveal truths to you. Can you hear them? They may not appear as clear words or bright revelations. Often, they come as a vague discomfort. A nameless sadness, a need to cry without reason. Don't fight it, don't deny it, because what you deny dominates you, and what you accept changes you. In my work with wounded souls, I have come to understand an exhausted soul is not a sign of failure, but of overload, of a life in which you have given too much, to others, to the system, to your duties, without leaving anything for yourself. That's why I tell you, if your body longs for rest, but you feel there's more to it, then listen. Listen to the soul that cries between the sheets of silence, and do not judge it, because this voice might be the most genuine thing you've felt in a long time. Long before any visible crisis occurs, the unconscious begins to speak, subtly disguised as indifference, exhaustion, or this strange urge to withdraw. When no one else understands you, the unconscious opens a quiet refuge for you. But this place is not an escape, not a sign of weakness. It is a sacred space, a space where the parts of you that you have long ignored can finally be heard. In my years of observation, I've seen how many people fear their own depths, and so they surround themselves with noise, obligations, and distractions just to avoid hearing that inner whisper that says, "There's something in here you need to look at." And when not even coffee or external motivation can activate you anymore, it's because your unconscious has deliberately brought you to this point so you can return to yourself. In that state, where everything seems pointless, you might just cross the threshold into a new awareness. The unconscious, mysterious as it may seem, is not against you. On the contrary, well, it is your strongest ally. But it demands honesty. It tolerates no masks and no roles. So if you feel like you can't go on, it may be because a deep part of you is no longer willing to live a lie. This feeling of emptiness is not emptiness. It is fertile ground, a place where something new can grow, but only if you have the courage not to run. The unconscious is like a silent mother. It doesn't scream. But if you are willing to listen, it will give you answers you won't find in any book, any guide, or any superficial advice. And these answers don't always come as words. Sometimes these truths appear as images, dreams, memories, old emotions you thought you had long buried, but which return because they now seek integration. Everything you have suppressed, postponed, or sacrificed out of fear is not lost. It has only been waiting quietly inside you. Now that you've slowed down, now that you've found some stillness, the moment has come. The unconscious is speaking. Don't run. Accompany it, because in this seeming darkness lies something that has long been waiting to be born. There is a part of you that appears in no photo and is never mentioned in conversations. A part you may not even recognize yourself. Yet it lives with you, even when you ignore it. I called it the shadow. It is not a demon, not a curse, but a natural dimension of the human psyche. Everything you have suppressed, repressed, refused to look at, all of it is part of this shadow. As a child, you learned to show what was good, what others liked. But fear, anger, sadness, desire, all of that was locked away in a dark box. This box doesn't disappear, it fills up over time. And when it is full, when the soul can no longer carry it, the shadow rises, and it does not rise quietly. It stops you, forces you to pause. It compels you to lie down, to shut the world off, not because you are weak, but because this is the only moment it can reach you undisturbed. In your withdrawal away from the noise and duties, the shadow sits beside you, and even if it frightens you at first, because it reveals what you've suppressed, it also brings a gift, the truth about yourself. Because the shadow is not only darkness, it also holds your suppressed strength, your buried creativity, your locked away freedom. If you ignore it, it shows up as symptoms, anxiety, exhaustion, chronic dissatisfaction. But if you acknowledge it with humility, it becomes an ally. Many who came to me in search of answers didn't understand that their symptoms were the voice of a desperate shadow. And I told them, "You are not sick. You are on the verge of meeting a powerful part of yourself." So if today you feel without energy, with no desire to play the same old game, then maybe you are standing at the threshold of an important encounter. Not with the world, not with others, but with yourself, with your shadow. And if it comes, it is not to destroy you, but to free you, because what you reject controls you, but what you integrate transforms you. We were taught to believe that our worth lies in doing, in achievement, efficiency, goals, productivity. But the soul has no to-do lists. It doesn't ask how much you get done. It asks how honest you are. If you've been too far from yourself for too long, from your true desires, from your inner rhythm, it stops. This lack of motivation, this absence of drive that torments you, is not always weakness. Sometimes it's the soul whispering, "I can't keep pretending everything is fine." Because while the world demands productivity from you, your inner being longs for truth. What's the point in getting up every day to play a role that no longer reflects who you are? What's the point in running when you've forgotten where you're going? Some said to me, "Dr. Jung, I don't feel like doing anything anymore. Everything seems meaningless." And I didn't tell them, "Try harder." I said, "Listen, this feeling may be the voice of your soul, asking you, come back to yourself. Because this impulse to slow down, to no longer follow the pace of others, can be an act of courage. An act that says, enough of being what others expect. I want to find out who I really am." The soul doesn't want you to meet deadlines. It wants you to become still enough to ask yourself one crucial question. Am I living my truth, or merely surviving in a convenient lie? Exhaustion doesn't always come from the body. Often it comes from the weight of a life that no longer fits you. And when the soul is forced to carry an identity that doesn't belong to it, it slowly begins to shut down. It fades, grows quiet, until one day you can no longer get up. Not because your body lacks energy, but because the life waiting for you when you rise is no longer your own. That's why I invite you, don't fight this desire for rest. Listen to it. Honor this pause. It may be the first step toward your truth. And once your inner truth reveals itself, nothing can remain the same. When the soul is tired of sustaining a life that no longer reflects it, it does not stay silent. It speaks through signs that the body translates as fatigue, lack of drive, withdrawal. And right there, many believe they've hit rock bottom, but in reality they stand at a threshold. What we call a crisis, I've come to understand as a calling, not into chaos but into transformation. Because the psyche, like nature, has its cycles. And when one ends, it doesn't do so with fanfare and applause, but with confusion, with loss, with the feeling of no longer knowing who you are or where you're going. In the moment when you no longer recognize your reflection, the soul begins to reshape your true face. That's why it stops everything else. You can no longer pretend, no longer function, no longer please. What once worked no longer does. What once drove you now leaves you empty. This feeling of paralysis, the desire to simply stay in bed, to not interact, not perform, not speak. This is not just exhaustion. It is a sign. Something old is dying in you, and something new is trying to be born. But this birth does not happen with applause. It happens in the shadows, in the intimacy of the soul. I have accompanied many people on this path, and I always told them, don't rush it, don't avoid it, don't disguise it. What is happening is sacred. It is the moment when you say goodbye to old versions of yourself that have fulfilled their purpose. The hardest part of true transformation is not what's new. It's letting go of what's old. Letting go of roles, of masks, of habits that once gave you security but now prevent you from growing. And this bed, where you now lie without strength, may be your cradle of transformation. Because the soul does not transform in noise, but in the quiet solitude of one who dares to truly listen to themselves. Painful? Yes. Often misunderstood by others? Yes. But absolutely necessary. Inner transformation does not begin with a rational decision. It begins with a quiet collapse, with a sincere surrender to the fact that you can no longer ignore your truth. And if you are at that exact point right now, in this deep surrender, then let me tell you, you are not lost. You are in the middle of it. Your soul is now taking the lead, and it does so with love, even if it looks as though everything is falling apart. Because for the new to arise, the old sometimes has to disappear completely. There comes a moment after the pause, after the collapse, after the darkness, when something within you begins to whisper again. It does not scream, it does not demand, it simply reminds you. Perhaps you catch yourself thinking about things you once loved but gave up for some reason. Perhaps an old dream reappears, a passion that was buried under years of duty, expectation, and adaptation. And then you realize you didn't lose your energy, you lost your sense of meaning. It wasn't your body that didn't want to get up anymore. It was your soul protesting against a life in which its true desires had been forgotten. How many of us have moved away from what we truly love, just to fit into an image of success that others deemed appropriate? We convinced ourselves that what made our hearts beat faster wasn't serious, wasn't reasonable, wasn't profitable enough. And so day after day, we packed away our real passions into a box labeled childish, immature, waste of time. But the soul does not forget. And when it can no longer bear an empty existence, it has only one option. It forces you to pause, to look, to return inward. And in that looking, you begin to rediscover parts of yourself you thought were long dead, but they were only waiting for you to stop running. I have seen people who, after long periods of apparent depression, were reborn with remarkable clarity, not because they found some external motivation, but because they reconnected with a deep, inner longing they had forgotten. A man once said to me, "Jung, I can't bear this life anymore. I feel empty. Nothing fulfills me." I asked him, "What made you happy as a child?" He began to cry, and after a long silence said, "Drawing, I could draw for hours, but I stopped because they told me it wasn't a serious path." That answer was anything but trivial. It was the soul pointing the way back. Because what truly carries us is not social approval, not professional success, not even security. It is that inner spark that connects us to our true self. And when that spark ignites again, even as a tiny flame, everything begins to change. So if you find yourself right now in a dark, quiet, disoriented place, then ask yourself, what did you love before the world told you who you should be? It's not too late. It is never too late to return to yourself. The soul knows the way. It only needs you to finally listen without fear. And now you understand, don't you? That desire to stay in bed, that apparent lack of energy, it wasn't your enemy, it was your medicine. Because in a world that constantly demands that you function, perform, and produce, pausing becomes an act of courage. And the silence that initially unsettled you, you can now see with different eyes, as a refuge, as a sacred space in which the soul was finally allowed to speak. You are not broken, you are not lost, you are in a process. And the processes of the soul are not measured by efficiency but by depth. Sometimes it is necessary to come to a complete standstill in order to hear the original voice again. That voice from deep within you that does not shout but whispers, "You are alive. You can return. You can still become the person you truly are." Because no matter how long you've been separated from yourself, the soul does not leave you. It only waits for the moment when you are ready to listen. And if you are still today, unmoving, if nothing else is working, perhaps that moment has finally arrived.